Here's a special important message.
All right, hello, welcome to episode 2 of We Are the Road Crew. My name is Stephen Hill, your host. Thank you very much for joining us once again on this podcast. If you listen to episode 1, if you're coming in first time in episode 2, welcome to you for the first time. This is a podcast about music of sorts, about live music, to put it a little bit more clearly. And if you want to focus right in on the exact kernel of what this podcast is, it is about the business of making those gigs that you go to happen, how they tick, how they work, the backstage machinations of how your favourite bands get onto that stage and do the thing that you love to see them do. This week on the show, our guest is George Baker. He has worked with some of the biggest artists in the world. Everyone from Biffy Clyro to Metallica to Black Sabbath to the likes of Katy Perry, Adele and Take That. In a very specific capacity. His company do Pyrotechnics. Now, just to kind of go back to when I first started to go to gigs myself, the idea of going to see a band with Pyrotechnics, I have to say, was a little bit alien to me. I grew up in the period kind of just during or slightly after grunge happened. Grunge, of course, all about stripping down everything to its base elements. You'd be lucky most of the time if you went and saw a band in the mid to late 90s if they had a curtain at the back of the stage, let alone pyrotechnics and confetti cannons going off all over the place. And so I grew up going to watch a lot of bands who, you know, when I think of some of the best gigs that I saw at that time, Pantera, Rage Against the Machine, those bands rarely, very, very, very rarely did I see a band who used any kind of pyrotechnic or put on any sort of show that you see today at all. Just didn't really happen. And then I remember it was Limp Bizkit at the Ozfest in the United States. People were saying Limp Bizkit are coming out of a big toilet at the Ozfest. And I thought, oh, how exciting. A big toilet on stage. What a mad idea that is. And it sort of seemed after that the idea of, you know, that kind of 1980s razzmatazz, it started to come back a bit into the scene of sort of rock and metal and indie music. And then I saw Rammstein. And I think Rammstein were probably the first time where I remember seeing a band who utilised the show and all the stuff that happened around them being on stage as much as they did just standing there and playing their music and sounding good. And over the years, that has definitely escalated. These days, if you go and see a festival headliner, if you go and see someone like Muse, if you go and see someone like the Foo Fighters or Metallica or Rammstein or, you know, whoever it may be, Taylor Swift has got an absolutely unbelievable production that she did on, if you watch her Netflix special. These days, these massive stars, you can't imagine them not having a massive show. So somebody has to put that on. And we talked to George about that. He is the man that designs all of these things and helps these artists achieve their goal of putting on these unbelievably spectacular shows. In 2019, going to gigs, you know, gig tickets are expensive and you want to get your money's worth. And I think these days you're getting your money's worth when you see these absolutely insane shows, and production values and production levels just keep increasing and increasing and increasing all the time. So it's a very, very interesting topic of conversation for us to be having. And that is where we're going to be going with this chat. So, as I said at the start, thanks very much for joining us. If this is your first time, thanks very much for coming back. If this is your second time, I'm going to give you a little shout out to, you know, make sure you follow us at Road Crew Pod on Twitter and give us some love. And also, you know, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, write a little nice review and say, isn't this a wonderful podcast? We would appreciate all that stuff if you are enjoying what you are hearing on We Are the Road Crew. But that's enough of my hard sell. Let's get on with the chat. This is me talking to George Baker. All right, George, hello. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, how are you? Good.
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Thanks for coming on.
No worries.
Much appreciated. We were just chatting before we actually started recording then, and I've just learned that you've gone out on your own.
Yeah, so just started up a new company with business partner, Encore SFX. So that's kind of where we're going with that. So all special effects, flames, CO2, lasers, anything you can think of. That's what we do. Okay. And I was going to ask you as well, at the kind of the tender age of, you're
22.
I have just turned 23. As of last week.
Congratulations!
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday to you.
It's all very
23
exciting.
with your own company is that is very impressive.
Oh,
when I'm trying to think what I was doing when I was 23, it was pretty pathetic, but particularly pathetic compared to owning your own company.
Well, it's been hard work to get there, but it's worth the hard work. So that's it.
Nice. So I want to take you back a little bit to where the passion for this idea came from. Now, obviously, we're focusing on it more. I know you guys do lots of different things, or you yourself do lots of different things, but particularly in the sphere of music.
Yep.
What was it? Do you remember going to a gig, your first gig, and do you remember seeing anything at a gig where you were like, that looks really cool, but it could look cooler? Yeah,
I think the passion really came from... I started doing stuff when I was 14, and it seems ridiculous to say, but it started out in the local live music scene, going along with what then became my boss at the time, and saw like a Battle of the Bands rock night, and was like, yeah, this is cool. Like, and just looking at what people were doing behind the scenes and going, yeah, that's really cool as well. I'd love to be a part of that, and people don't need to know it's me, but I can just add my little bit to it, whether that be with the sound, the lighting, the special effects. It's all about making that end goal. Yeah.
Was there a particular band who you saw that made you think this is a show? Because I was saying just before we started chatting, the idea, particularly for someone my age, I remember when there was kind of no show in the grunge era, when you'd see a band like Pearl Jam, not really a show, like just a curtain and then a band played. But these days, the bands have full-blown shows, which you're very much responsible for.
Yeah.
Was there one that you saw that was like,
I think, I can't remember what year it was, but I got took to one of the Take That shows years ago with my parents. My mum, bless her, going strong with Take That. She loves it. It was all from back then, really, looking at that. And they obviously put on an incredible show, and I've been fortunate enough to be around their shows now, and it's just incredible to look at that.
Yeah, that was at the Circus one when they had it, because I remember they did. I've seen. I didn't go to the gigs. You'll have to.
Yeah, it must have been that, because that was. I'm trying to think how long ago Circus was.
Probably, I'm thinking sort of 2006, 2007.
Yeah, around then.
Yeah, but that was a full blown
spectacle,
visual extravaganza. Yeah. So, at what point did you kind of go? This is. I mean, how does that develop? Like, what was the kind of first tentative steps to actually getting involved with the music scene?
So it seems ridiculous to say, but it was literally starting out doing the small things locally. It was just doing those music gigs, learning the craft, and then getting known for doing that. And it was only I went off to university to kind of study to get contacts.
Yeah.
And it was then when I realised about the contacts, that was when it was like, yeah, this is really the way to go. The music scene is there. That's where I want to be. That's the area I want to be in.
Seems like quite a hard thing to learn on the job. I mean, obviously, you're pressing a lot of buttons that could potentially singe quite a lot of very important
literally blow people up. Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you get into a position where, like, having that at your fingertips?
Essentially, learning the craft by being the technicians, being the people that help set up for the people that press the buttons, and it was really just by a little bit of being in the right place at the right time, followed by a lot of hard work and determination of knowing that learn everything, speak to everyone, and if you see a person struggling with something, help them, because that's when they're going to remember you and ask more about you. And it kind of just built from there, and eventually you sit there and go, I'm now being trusted to actually be in charge of running the people, so then shooting the shows, and then before you know it, I'm being very fortunate to shoot some of the shows that I have, and you try to trace the path back.
Yeah, of course. I mean, has there been one kind of, when you look back at that path, has there been one kind of integral moment or integral show that you look back on and go, that was really important? Because bands have these gigs, don't they? Where, you think of a band who, when they first headlined Glastonbury, or when they first headlined a big festival, or they play a big venue, and they think back to, that was the gig that kind of broke us or gave us the confidence to go on and write this album.
I think the gig that really was poignant was probably X Factor. When I shot the series of that, that was kind of the turning point of going, actually I've gone from shooting a few shows here and there, when you're going out with just a bit of confetti, to actually, you're in charge of a full-blown live televised show that's going out to 5 million people every week. That was kind of the crucial bit, because from then it's been a constant flow then of shooting jobs. So.
X Factor, how was that? Terrifying on national television?
yeah. The first time doing that was literally the most nerve-wracking thing ever, because it was a case of literally walking in, going, right, this is the plan at the beginning of the day. Let's see what we actually come out with at the end. But at the end of the day, we'll have shot live to millions of people worldwide, and it can't cover any of my mistakes if I make them. So,
well, the thing with that is, I think it's interesting, is you're essentially working with amateurs as well.
That's another massive
10
point.
People who are not signed to labels. No. They're people who've kind
not
of
used to being around effects and nothing like that.
Queued up in this, for a couple of hours to do an audition, and suddenly they're getting put on national TV. And not only are they getting put on national TV and being asked to sing in front of Simon Cowell, you're about to shoot a big flame or confetti cannon.
Precisely. I mean, the first week especially, because it's such a daunting thing for them as well, because they've gone from doing their audition to suddenly going into this massive studio where they're now going to literally perform live in front of everyone. So, I mean, the pressure's on for all of us, especially in that first week. And for us, it obviously is a constant, monitoring everything to make sure everyone's safe, because it's not just them, it's the crew as well, and it's the live audience, all of which 9 times out of 10 will have not really experienced effects as such.
Yeah. How much creative control do you get over something like that?
So we obviously get, with being the department that we are, we get our own creative twist on things.
Yeah.
And that changes depending on the shows. I mean, it depends who you're working with. Obviously, most shows have their creative directors and stuff like that, so we work to kind of the concept of the entire show, but we'll input to what we think is going to give you the best look for not only your money, but for a safety side, and actually from a, especially on X Factor, from a camera point of view. So we do have quite a lot of creative input, because actually it's an industry where a lot of people don't necessarily know quite what we do. So fair bit of control.
Well, I was going to ask you actually, because I would imagine something as militaristic as the X Factor is probably not the ideal place for you to kind of flex your creative muscles, or for you to kind of work with an artist. But I was sort of interested in the way in which an artist approaches you, and I would presume that, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I would presume that you would get some artists who are very, very clear on the stage set that they want to have and exactly when they want to have it. I mean, for example, I know Rammstein apparently kind of direct their stage set as they write their album.
Yes.
So they actually sort of create the show.
Yeah, you create the whole package.
Yeah. Have you ever had any artists come up and go, I just want a cool show, let's go?
Yeah, I mean, I've done shows. We've done a couple of like Children in Need shows. When Chris Evans finished at Radio 2, he did his last Children in Need charity event at the O2, and that was really good, because that was literally like, we just want a bunch of effects to make this look amazing and just add to the night. So that was brilliant, because we got to just mix it up, and got to look through an artist roster that was there and go, well, this artist could use this in this song, and we don't know the set list always changes up to the last minute anyway, so it was a case of, right, this is all this, guys, this is where the stuff is, let's go have fun with it and make a good show for everyone. And obviously it's for a great cause, that show particularly.
Yeah, of course. And also I guess talking about looking at artists and their songs and what would fit where, is there a little kind of, I mean, I want to kind of ask this of all of our guests, but I think because you almost work in tandem so much with the music, the lights and the flash bombs and the pyro, it all has to go. You're almost working as an extra member of the band, if you like. Is there a sort of deep down inside you, is there a frustrated musician who wishes?
I mean, I definitely can't sing in tune. I definitely can't play any instruments, but I mean, I can hit things on time. So that's
drummer.
Maybe a drummer. Maybe in a future life, I'll go for being a drummer. I think that's the main thing. I think the main thing is I look at my job as to add to what they do and work in tandem, not to be more than them or not be less than them, but just to create the best looking show that they can get. Because at the end of the day, the people that it all matters for is the public there. It does, and as long as everyone goes home safe, and inherently at the moment with the 21st century that we're in, like, everyone wants that moment, that picture, and that's the bit that I then get the satisfaction from afterwards, is that you can look and go, yeah, that many people saw that picture, and that's the iconic picture of their set, and that's the bit that you can really take kind of gratification from, I guess.
So you never get too excited and feel like you're... I just think as you're pressing buttons where things and music is happening, your whole sort of physicality must get excited by watching all of this unfold.
Oh, definitely. I mean, the big festival finale displays and stuff like that, they're the ones that I do get really excited for, because that's not just a one hit bang done. That's something that is, in a way, some people would say kind of art, because you're making it go to the music, you're making it work in tandem, and that is nice to know that actually you're really complementing everything that it should be.
Do you feel like there is, I mean, I kind of said this at the top of the show and the top of our chat with you, is that I remember a time where there kind of was no show, and now it feels so integral. What is it about the extras with a show? If you go and see a band, what is it about the kind of the band's ability and the kind of the stuff that you can give a band that you think helps and is important to creating like a really, really great live show?
I mean, gone are the days now where shows would go into theatres and you would literally, like you were saying, you'd have your cloth, you'd have two trusses up there with lights on, you'd have your sound engineer out the front, everyone would come, they'd have a great time at the theatre and go home. People now are wanting to be wowed on a mass scale, so to do that inherently everything's going to have to go bigger, and I think when it became kind of a younger generation wanting to go to more and more concerts, I think that was when it shifted, because it was going into bigger venues, so you were starting to then get the bigger productions. And people like you touched on Rammstein, their whole performance is just incredible with how they use special effects, because they've really thought about how to interact it with everything. And you can do some beautiful things with lights and sound, but you can never necessarily give that like fifth dimension, if you get what I mean, as in that feel of flames coming across your face when it's a big hit in the song, or see the smell of pyro going off when it does that, and being able to touch bubbles in the sky and feel like you're really at one with the performance and actually immersed in it. And I think that was the moment when the consumer wanted more.
Yeah, and I don't think that thirst for more is going to go away either,
no,
which must make your job daunting.
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants new stuff, and I think especially over, I think the past kind of couple of years, it started to actually change again, where actually at the moment people either want bigger flames or bigger confetti, or they want something different to that. They don't want to necessarily always see that now. And it's becoming more common now that even your smaller tours will pretty much have SFX anyway, whether that's, you've had some confetti, there you go, at the end of the last song. But because so many are doing that now, everyone wants different things and the audience wants stuff. So like the bubbles and stuff like that, that's becoming more kind of like the obscure effects that actually makes our job interesting, because we have to integrate that in, but also more daunting, as you say, because we've got to make that work.
Do you have any ideas in your head? Because I mean, I recently, to kind of continue down the Rammstein theme, I recently went to the Rammstein Milton Keynes show, and I've just remember standing there with the pylons at the sound desk were on fire. They'd blown up a big keg. They had a they got a dinghy that went through the crowd.
Pyro over your head.
And it was just so much, so often. But like you say, really, really creative. And it looked it beautifully fit their aesthetic. But I just thought to myself, well, I don't know what else you could possibly do.
Yeah.
Like in 10 years, if people look at that and go, "Oh, the Rams," that to me feels like pack it all up.
Like the pinnacle,
over.
yeah, it's done.
It's done. But but I know that it can't be, and I know that in 10 years we'll probably look back on that Rammstein show and go, "Yeah, it's pretty good." But I mean, look what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't predict the future, but
why not? You
can. You can. In 10 years' time, what do gigs look like from your point of view?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I reckon in 10 years' time, I think everything will probably turn more eco-friendly, which obviously is good. Yeah. I think audiences will expect to be immersed, as in not taken by surprise if they're immersed in it, but actually expected to be immersed in it.
Yep.
And I think we'll find that what I'll call the generic effects that you see now, say some flames, some CO2, I think you'll find that they get utilised in different ways now, and there will come a point where obviously you're seeing repetition of that, but then I think you'll see bigger of that. You'll see, each idea you think of can be expanded. It's all dependent on budgets and space, and I think we'll find that inevitably budget and space will probably increase anyway. So everything will increase with that as well. You think of what lighting rigs say used to be 5 years ago.
Yeah.
You look at now what they are here, and some of them have doubled, if not quadrupled, in the amount of fixtures that you see and stuff like that. So I think that's inevitably where you go. You'll see more fixtures, you'll see more artists wanting to integrate it in. But there's some artists that I think will go the other way. For instance, Foo Fighters put on a great show anyway. Just recently finished a show with them at the August Bank Holiday weekend.
Yeah.
And they have a big display at the end, but do they need anything else for the 3 hours that they perform to everyone else when they're such an impressive band? No, because they're so impressive. So I think we'll inevitably see a bit of a shift like that, but I think everything in general will be bigger and more immersive.
But, I mean, from my perspective, I always feel that budget is obviously important, but creativity
definitely
is more important than budget. I think I've seen, two shows that I've seen at Brixton Academy stick out to me that even compared to, I saw Guns N' Roses on that comeback tour, and that there was pyro and there was fireworks and there was the backing screen, but none of it was anything that I hadn't ever seen before. Yeah. Whereas compared to, I recently saw Gojira at Brixton Academy, and I remember seeing Parkway Drive at Brixton Academy, and both of those bands, Parkway Drive, spinning drum kit and lasers and CO2 and fire and sparklers all going off at the same time. It was like I was in a Vietnam. Yeah. And Gojira just really, really sort of classy effects where, I think they had a thing where they were like, there was a mountain behind them and they put dry ice at the bottom of so it looked like they were stood on clouds.
Yeah,
it was really cool, really, really cool effect. But to me, both those things were far more creative on what I don't know the budgets for the various bands, but I would presume Gojira have a smaller budget than Guns N' Roses. Yeah, and yet they managed to do something which has stuck with me far more than what Guns N' Roses did. Precisely,
and I think depending on artists and who they've got working with them, that creative direction can come from different places. There's some really clever creative directors out there who are coming up with really clever concepts, and I think the way that you see creative ideas is, I didn't see either of those shows, but I presume that they had an element to them. You touched on the mountain, that actually they had quite creative sets and quite creative, entire look of the show. And it's when you've got that creative buzz starting from literally the stage to what the band are in and everything like that, that's when actually we can become a lot more creative, because we can really integrate with them. And it's when you're integrating as all departments, that's when the most creative and memorable shows really come off.
Yeah. Well, talking about memorable shows, I think we should probably talk about Stormzy.
I think we should. Yeah, that was a memorable show.
Yeah. So how long have you been working with Stormzy, and how did that relationship begin?
So it's probably been a couple of years, been doing Stormzy shows, and that initial relationship started when Stormzy was doing a load of he was doing X Factor, he was doing MTV EMAs, all sorts of stuff like that. And we'd done those shows and kind of worked on, say, a song here, a song there to come up with the creative concept. And those as standalone pieces looked, beautiful in their own right, but it wasn't a full Stormzy show. And it was then the most iconic show where everything kind of kicked off with Stormzy was his Wireless show.
Yeah.
That was where it was kind of, he wasn't doing many shows really throughout the year as such, and it was definitely his big one in the UK. Yeah. And we'd been approached to come up with a few ideas of what's new, what's fresh, what's in your face, stand up, that hero shot, that Instagram shot. And inevitably, then Big Flames, 100 foot of fireball became that concept that we implemented into that. And it was through working with that kind of developed the rest of the relationship, and then it went on forward, obviously, to Glastonbury.
We should talk about Glastonbury. So Stormzy headlining Glastonbury, the biggest night, the biggest gig in the history of UK hip hop. Obviously for grime it definitely is, but for hip hop in the United Kingdom, that has to be the pinnacle of all time. Surely.
Oh, definitely. It was a major kind of statement to the world, not only just a genre of music. It was to the world. For that show to be pulled off how it was, and to hear how many people spoke about it or still are speaking about it now. We're speaking about it now.
Yeah.
A show has made it when there's that much talk about it from people who aren't in that world, or stuff like that. The amount of people I was getting messages from going, "Oh my goodness, that show was incredible," and it's like, well, yeah, that's a statement show.
So when did you find out about Glastonbury? When were you brought on board? And what was the lead up to that show like? The kind of the problems, the discussions, the ideas. Just talk us through the whole kind of experience up until just before we went on stage.
So we first got approached for it probably a couple of months before, due to we have obviously a lead time with all sorts of paperwork, and especially with the size of Glastonbury, it's not just us putting paperwork in, it's all sorts of others. So there's quite a strict deadline with that, which all of that kind of has to be, I say, finalised in inverted commas. It has to be sorted about a month out. So we'd kind of got a concept in our head a month out, and then that concept to what actually was achieved is quite a difference, because obviously we've then got time to change things and develop it. So then from basically a month out, I was on various other shows, so kind of the last 2 weeks before was the nitty-gritty. That was when we were in rehearsals, that's when we were going forward from there. So obviously it was it's a very confidential show in terms of there were so many elements that wasn't just us, and it wasn't even just the technical side. His vest, for instance,
which will become iconic.
Yes, precisely.
For sure.
The dances he had on stage, the BMX boys, all of that was. There were so many elements to it. I think there was something like over 350 members of Stormzy working party there on the day. Like they couldn't actually physically get us to all sit down in one place because there's so many of us, and that's before guests. So there's all those elements, and then obviously the real time for us is, we can't necessarily shoot the entire show. We can't do 100-foot flames in rehearsals indoors because roofs in the way. There's a lot of working very closely with the creative directors to get really work through their vision and to let them know what can and can't be done feasibly, whether that's not even if we can physically do it, whether we're allowed to do it. I don't know if you've been to behind stage at Glastonbury, but obviously there's the old tree there and the road runs down the back of it, or the site route, so I can't just put stuff everywhere. So we've had to do a few changes according to that, and then basically we get onto site, and then you have the real world changes. Suddenly someone's parked their lorry in the way, or so. Suddenly we're in half a foot of mud and we can't actually do anything there. That's where it's kind of game time for us, because that's where we've really got to work it through and develop it. And then there'll still be changes. The set list may change, tracks may change. They may have done a rehearsal and it's changed. And then eventually we get on to about an hour out of the performance. That's where it kind of is crunch time for me. I sit there and have those nervous jitters of putting my headphones on. I better learn the cues one more time. So you go through, and then I hit all those cues manually throughout the show. So it's getting those cues lodged in your head and making sure then that you go in when you got your hour changeover to make sure everything's safe and that you're show ready, so you can sit there and know that you're there. I mean, for the Stormzy show, particularly the Glastonbury one, the Flames are the opening hit.
Yeah.
So if I miss that, I've got to feel like I'm going to have a bad show for the rest of the show, and also I've just missed the first cue. So that show particularly is quite a difficult one, because you're on from the beginning and throughout. There's no stopping you.
How close did you get to Stormzy himself, and did you kind of see? Because the pressure on him to deliver that.
Yeah, it is monumental. Yeah,
was huge. Could you get a feeling of how he was as an individual was feeling?
I think we all knew what it meant to not just him but each other, and we all knew what needed to be achieved. And then, so the run up to it, yes, you feel it, but when you get to that hour before, it's really weird to say, but I kind of go into a realm of relaxation, because it's crunch time now. Yeah. You can't be worrying about it. Just got to get on and solve if you've got problems, solve the problems and deal with it. You've got to get on with it and go. We hadn't had any sleep really that 2 days that we'd loaded in, so we were going in quite tired anyway, but it's straight in and perform to our best.
How do you feel at the end of something like that? I mean, particularly that show. Well, actually, no, I watched that on iPlayer after the kind of the morning after, because I was out, and I just saw on Twitter
everything
it was
kicking
everywhere.
off, and
there was no. I mean, what I love about that, and why I'm convinced that it will be the kind of culturally significant moment for music of this period in this country for a long time. Why I'm so convinced by that is because nobody went, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
People either went, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen, this is perfect, this is saying so much.
I didn't see a single bad comment about it. I mean, I'm sure if I looked hard enough.
There were quite a lot, but they tended to be people who were going, why aren't Oasis playing?
Yeah,
you know what I mean, there was a
we
lot
want Wonderwall.
Yeah, there was a lot of those people, but to be the most important and the most culturally significant things are divisive.
Yeah, precisely. It's like Marmite, you love it or you hate it.
Yeah, exactly. I was and remained absolutely convinced that, like I say, will be one of the most culturally significant musical things that has happened for music in this country of this decade. Like, no question about it in my mind. How, one, I guess this is a kind of two-pronged question when I finally get to it. One, how long did it take for you to kind of, feel like that? How do you physically feel and mentally feel after you've come off the end of a show like that? And also, how does it feel to, when you consider something like that, how does it feel to think, well, I've kind of played my part in something which is incredibly sort of culturally important? Yeah.
I think it was weird at the end of Glastonbury. We had another show at Glastonbury. We came back for Dave. So for me, Glastonbury itself wasn't over. Yeah. So it was not quite the same feeling. However, the prime one that sticks to mind is a Stormzy show, and it is that Wireless show. And it was the same amount of workload. And I remember firing the last cue, walking out the back. I sat on the truck and I just could not move. I was absolutely drained, and it was from, you take on the pressure of making sure everything's done. You do everything so that it can be done. And it got to the point where my body just went, nope. And I think that's the initial thing at the end of any show. And I did feel it at Glastonbury, where you just sit there and you don't know what to say or think, because you're trying to still compute it yourself. It's an awful lot of work, and it isn't just me pressing the button. I get the almost a glory job as such. However, it's not as glorious as it seems sometimes. But, you know, I've still got a team of 10 guys who have worked constantly and have delivered everything I've asked of them. So you just sit there and you're like, all you can do is be thankful to them. And also it's afterwards when they're sending you pictures of what happened, that's when it's kind of sinks in for me, and kind of you look back and you actually feel quite, I guess, proud of yourself. And you know, I think it's quite right. People should be proud of what they, you know, have been a part of, because if one single person didn't do their job right, it wouldn't be the same as what it was. You know, if the lighting team hadn't been a part of it, then it wouldn't be the same. You know, and it's that actually you go, yeah, that was a proper team effort, and I think that's the main thing.
Well, I think particularly with that Stormzy show, like, you know, watching, I kind of watched a little bit of it back when I knew I was going to be chatting to you, and like you say, from the second it's on,
yeah,
and you're almost like, I mean, I would never say you could take Stormzy out of it and it would be, but it wouldn't be as good, and it wouldn't be as you know, impressive, and it wouldn't be as captivating, obviously.
Yeah,
but the show as a standalone show, like, just when you were like, there's so much
going
happening
on, yeah.
and, you know, and it's a really unique, you know, that backdrop. I mean, it's a kind of a nod to Grenfell, right? The kind of
that whole thing was just a nod to his life, really, I think, and if you watched, you know, as you watched the entire show, I felt it. You know, I don't know about you, but you feel like you're on a journey with him. It's a big thing. And you could see how important it was to him. You could physically see that, especially some of the close-ups, that this was him giving his all to the world to go, I'm here, world, come on, let's go. And I think that's really kind of a crucial, quite a humbling thing, actually, to know that you've been a part of someone delivering such a big message, you know, to people. And
again, it goes with what we're saying with creativity over budget, or I mean, in this case, I think creativity alongside budget.
Yeah.
Where an artist, rather than going, if we just keep firing firebombs at them, then they'll go, ooh.
Yeah,
that was, like you say, a representation of
knew going into the show,
life and art. Yeah.
Well, we knew going into the show with just how much we had going on. You know, a standard show, you know, say what you see at the O2, you know, you may do, I don't know, 3 or 4 songs, you know, maybe 6 if, you know, it's a big show. I was definitely in double figures of stuff that we were interacting with during that Glastonbury set. And it's like, you know, from before you even go in there, that it's going to be a big show. It's going to go off. And what more of an iconic stage to do it at, you really, you know. Yeah,
amazing. Has there been any artists that have ever kind of, that have met with, or that you've met with kind of resistance at all? Because I wonder if, you know, like I mentioned Pearl Jam before, I mean, I don't know if you obviously wouldn't know, or no Pyrotechnic people would have ever worked with Pearl Jam, because they're not really interested in doing that sort of thing. But has there ever been any artists where they've kind of gone, you're not really doing kind of what I sort of had in my head?
It's not even necessarily what's in their head. Sometimes it gets to the point where actually, with their entire vision for the show, it doesn't work. We've done shows before where you'll get there and the idea on paper sounded amazing, but by the time it actually gets to the end result, it's actually doesn't quite fit, because say someone's changed the track, and then all of a sudden it's one of those that in our job, you know, we've got to assist clients, and actually sometimes we've got to assist them away from using certain effects, or and you do get that resistance sometimes, because some artists will say that smoke is affecting how they sing, and stuff like that, and you have to then manage expectations, I think is the way I'll say it. You know, you've once that's been grasped about how to manage expectations, suddenly things become a bit easier.
Did you see the Bros documentary?
I did. On Netflix, yes, I did have. I didn't watch it all, but I watched most of it.
It's my favourite thing ever.
The bits I did see were entertaining, to say the least.
I mean, their idea of a stage show was just something that they came up with on a sort of PowerPoint presentation on their Mac. And then
I've had drawings literally where it's been a pen and paper going, I want it to look like that, and they draw angles and go, that's pyro going that way.
Right.
And then I deliver said message in a way that's a bit more than a paper drawing.
Yeah. So I get like the problems would be, I guess, too vague or too specific. Like I want a dragon to come down and shoot fire over me during
Doable.
this song. Yeah, probably doable. What's more frustrating, too vague or too specific?
Too specific when other elements aren't in play. So if it's too specific and there's not the budget for it.
Yeah.
Or
have you ever had anyone ask for something where you're like, nobody can do that?
I've had to say no to certain things. I've been asked to do full body burns. There's a
Go
show.
on, name names.
No, I can't name names. No. But we did a basically like an action outdoors TV show that was out with Sky, and the idea was they wanted to come down a ramp on a skateboard and then be set fully alight. Having known the person that it was, and you know that we've got the rest of the filming to actually do for the rest of the show, it was one of those. It was like this isn't the kind of effect you mess around with. Like this can really go wrong, a full body burn. You know, there's lots of things we can do to make it safe, but there's still a lot that they've got to do to make themselves safe. So creative ideas are great, but when you don't understand the rules in different venues and stuff like that, suddenly it gets a very sticky situation. You know, like you could do a tour and 8 out of the 10 venues are perfectly fine with it, but if there's 2 venues that can't do it, then you're not giving the same experience to everyone. So you need to make it work for everyone. So sometimes it's.
I was going to ask about litigious health and safety individuals.
Oh yeah. My best friends.
I dare say you've fallen foul of one or two of them in your time.
I go on the principle everyone's my friend up until they annoy me. So the way we look at it is that we're there to work with them, and actually the reason 9 times out of 10 they're actually a little bit hesitant with us is because they may not necessarily fully understand what we're doing and have been told bits of information to help assist with it. So we actually have worked with quite a lot of venues and different clients, and that's something that Encore we do a lot anyway, is that we really focus on working with the health and safety companies, specifically so that actually they understand what we're doing and we understand what their job is, and then all of a sudden it becomes actually a bit easier for everyone.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, you still have the odd occasion that you just want to walk away and put your head in your hands because you know it's that person that's going to be a nightmare with you, but 9 times out of 10, as long as you're professional and respectful of them and are safe, then they've got nothing to come at you with.
I really want to hear about the 10th time out of 10.
Yeah, I know, that's the problem. Yeah, I know.
I mean, rather than walking away, have you ever had to sort of go, look, mate, we're doing this?
I've had to walk away from other people who think they're health and safety officers. I've had camera guys who suddenly think they know all of the legislations, and that's the only time it becomes an issue, when actually you're integrating not just your production show, but you're integrating, say, a festival production show.
Yeah. Because
the health and safety people there are to manage everyone. But the problem is sometimes it doesn't always work like that. Miscommunication, people don't understand when things are going off. If you could communicate it the right way to people, they're fine. But some people, bless them, look at me and go, "Oh, well, you're 22, 23. Why should I listen to you?" And you have to kindly point out to them that, would you like me to blow you up or not?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a really simple thing here.
You're not going to have eyebrows.
Yeah.
It would be the very best scenario.
Do you like your hair? No, then.
So, just before we kind of close up, I reckon I'll ask you best and worst ever day at work.
I have a lot of good days at work.
Wow.
So that's the main thing.
Let's start with worst if you want.
Oh, no, this is a really hard question, actually, because I tend to be I tend to put the worst ones to the back of my brain. Worst day at work, actually, I can tell you this. So I was out on a show in America. It was a residency show, and it was massive. They had 40 cent units all around. They had flames, CO2, smoke, low smoke, 6 different hits of confetti from 3 different locations, snow,
Oh my God. Is this Vegas?
This is in Vegas, and it was...
Narrowing it down one by one.
Yeah. Clock it down.
Sounds like Mariah Carey to me.
Close. And it was only when, like, the day before, we had to move everything for the third time. I think I know I went to the toilet and just had a little bit of a weep in the loo. I was like, come on, we can't get through this. Like, you know, and we'd done a whole week of 22-hour days. We'd had 2 hours sleep a night. And we got to this last day before the opening night, and we were just all like, you are having a laugh. And it didn't matter what we'd said or done in the first place. It was just constant changing. Oh, it's lasers as well. That was the other bit that was the complicated bit. And running cables all the way up to the roof, it was just, no.
And this is some sort of diva that you're working with, right?
Potentially could be.
Right. So I'm going to take that as a yes. We don't have to find out who it is. You said similar to Mariah Carey, so you're looking at a Celine Dion or somebody like that, right?
Just go down the list. Have a look recently. Yeah, I'm sure you can work it out.
What month was this? What year? We'll find out. But anyway, so because one of the things I was going to say is how close you work with the actual artist, or you know, I mean. Someone like that's going to be the go-between, right?
Yeah, oh, definitely, yeah.
And they have can often have quite a self-inflated opinion of themselves.
Yeah, I think essentially a lot of the time we work through kind of a middleman, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're on for a good show if you're working directly with them.
Mm-hmm.
There's always an element of interaction because obviously there's a safety element to it, but working through different people is fine. It's when they don't quite know what their vision is, it becomes very difficult, because the way I like to describe what SFX is that we're the first to be cut off the budget because we're not needed to do a show, we just improve a show.
Mm-hmm.
But also because of that, we're also the last to be added on. So actually it becomes quite difficult to manage their expectations. I've literally had on numerous occasions a phone call at 9 o'clock in the morning and I'm in the van by 11:30 going to do a show.
Oh.
And you go, well... You're getting quite literally what I've got in the warehouse. That is it.
Yeah.
It's that going back to managing expectations. Once you can deal with them, suddenly bad days don't seem quite so bad.
Yeah.
But they can still be bad.
Yeah. So they were pretty bad with Britney Spears, is what you're saying. Didn't deny it. Wow, maybe it was. No. Anyway, we don't know. So go on. You've had a little chance to think about it. Best ever day on the job.
Okay, here's the best day. It's going to be for a really weird reason, but go for it. Was London, Robbie Williams, when he was on his last tour, the Heavy Entertainment tour.
Mm-hmm.
I did the tour, and my parents came and saw it, and it was the first time they've ever come and seen one of the big shows I've done. So there you go. That was the best day because everything went off perfectly.
Oh, lovely. What's Robbie like?
Oh, lovely.
Is he all right?
Yeah, no, he's really nice. Yeah, and his dad's really nice as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a fan personally, but you pulled a face. You're obviously a Robbie fan.
I do like it. I after doing what was it 6 months or whatever it was of it, like you get to like it, and it's a really nice. The one thing
Stockholm syndrome.
I know. Yeah, that's just repetition, but no, it's they're a really nice camp as a group of people. So actually. If you've got a nice group of people around you, like with everything, it makes suddenly everything a lot better. So
is there any artists that you haven't worked with yet that you have an ambition to work with? Is there anyone that you ever see a video for, or you see them perform anything live and you think, do you know what? If I got in a room with them, I could design them the best show, and someone who you'd really love to be able to design a full-blown extravaganza
so I'm going to be slightly off to the left here, but I've always wanted to work with London Grammar.
Okay.
Because I think she's got an incredible voice.
Yeah.
And I think they put on a great show. And I think you could do some really nice, subtle things with that. Yes, there's probably other bigger shows out there and stuff like that other people would say, but I think they would be a brilliant...
They don't play absolutely gigantic venues either as well.
No, and that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
Like when you can actually choreograph something to the space that you're in.
Yeah.
Because... then you go back to having to be creative. I think the moment you start not trying to be creative and trying to be better is when actually you probably shouldn't carry on doing it, because you should always strive to be better with it.
What advice would you give to a band who are on a budget and say, want to try, because I've seen some bands actually do in very, very small venues, put on a show of sorts.
Yeah, definitely.
Not, a massive thing, but I've seen bands be, like you say, very, very creative in very, very small spaces before. What would be your advice to a band who are, very much in their infancy, who want to put on some sort of show but are hampered by a budget or budgetary constraints?
So I think the biggest thing would be you need to speak to the SFX companies. I think the biggest misconception is, it's loads of money. If you go to the right people, they will look at your situation and will make something work for your situation. Because at the end of the day, we love doing our job for us. Yeah. As in, we love making nice shows for people. We want people to go away and go, that was a brilliant job that they achieved for us. And I think the biggest misconception is, no, because there'll just be a lot of money because it's bound to be. Don't get me wrong, there is a cost to people's time, but we can work with that. If you go, this is all we've got, but next year we're going out for a tour, then, let's work with you to get something that that by the time you go out on tour next year, you're going to be really happy with and want to take on to give your audiences. So I think that's the biggest bit of advice is don't be afraid by what may be a misconception of what you think is too much money.
Yeah.
Ask, because we're all humans, we all want to help each other.
Yeah. And if you do, you never know, that band who are playing in a pub and you just did a couple of flash bombs for might end up headlining Glastonbury one day.
Precisely. A friend of mine used to...
good business acumen on your part, George.
Well, precisely. A friend of mine used to own a club back in my hometown, and Ed Sheeran used to play there, and now look at him.
Yeah,
so,
right for himself.
Yeah.
Last thing I'm going to ask you before I let you crack on and we close up the podcast. Ambition for yourself. I mean, we talked about what music and what venues and what concerts will look like in 10 years.
Yep.
Where do you see your career and what and how far you can take it? And what sort of things do you envisage yourself doing and the company doing in another 10 years? So
I think, our vision is always about giving the best creative show. We'll design with you, we'll develop your idea, and then we'll deliver it. And I think where I love the company and myself to be in 10 years' time would be that we're doing the big shows, and I'd really like to do an Olympics. That would be great. That would be kind of something I think, that's kind of the one thing left, I think, kind of in the pinnacle. I've done big sporting events, say, I've done bits of stuff like that, but I think something like an Olympics or something like that would be incredible to do. And also I want to be known for being safe, one of the safest companies out there that can actually also educate. I think a massive thing that I've a massive supporter of is really educating people and also bringing on new talent, because I got given opportunities. I'm very fortunate to be in the position I am in now, and I want to give that back. And I think that's the thing. I want to be known for being a very moral person and being at the top end of the game. Yeah, man, good. That's cool. Did you enjoy the 20? I mean, presumably you've seen the Danny Boyle 2012 Olympics opening ceremony many times. Yeah. That quite inspirational thing for you to watch? Well, yes. When I was with Quantum, we did the rings. Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. So it's been nice to, I've been fortunate enough to work around people that are constantly trying to achieve the best anyway. So that was some show. There was one incredible show. Sure. Still to this day. There you go. Yeah. Everyone. What is it now? Seven, doesn't feel like 7 years ago. Well, to me it doesn't anyway. No, it doesn't. I am significantly older than you, but that's fine. Anyway, good luck with everything in the future, George, and thank you so much for coming in. Do you want to give your company a plug? Seems like the least we can do. Oh, well, thank you very much. So Encore Special Effects, give us a call. We're based just outside of London, so okay, we can get anywhere. There you go. All right, lovely. Thanks for coming in, man. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Cheers. Later. Bye. All right, so there you go. That was George Baker, a man who blows things up for a living. He actually, as we left the studio, he did tell me who that diva was who was causing him some problems over in Las Vegas. And I am sworn to secrecy, but, I'm going to keep that little genie in a bottle
It's a dirty thing that she did, but no clues from me at all as to who it was. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. We will be back again next week with another fascinating character from behind the scenes in the world of music. Like I said before at the very, very start, please do subscribe, leave us a nice review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. We appreciate that. If you want to give us some love on Twitter, as I said at the start, it's at Road Crew Pod on Twitter, and we'll be back next week with another guest. Again, thank you very much for tuning in and listening, and I want to say a big thank you for George for giving up his, what was it, Thursday night? Yeah, it's a Thursday. I've just come back from New York and I've got a little bit of jet lag, so you have to excuse me at this point. But giving up his Thursday night and coming in to chat to us. Thanks very much, George, and we will see you next week. Cheers.